Lonely Cowboy found a native girl sleeping in a cabin until he whispered, "I will marry you." The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the dry, open plains. The wind whispered through the tall grasses, carrying the faint smell of dust and distant wildflowers. Jake, a lone cowboy, rode slowly, his horse's hooves stirring small clouds of dirt with each step. He had been traveling for days, following no clear path, just the rhythm of the land and the pull of his own restless heart. The prairie had always been both his home and his prison. It was beautiful, vast, and free, yet it reminded him of all that he had lost. His family, his small town, the warmth of a home filled with laughter, all gone in a blaze that had left him wandering ever since. He pulled the brim of his weathered hat lower over his eyes, shading them from the fading sun. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, but the colors did little to lift his mood. The loneliness had settled deep inside him like a weight that never lifted, no matter how far he rode. For years, he had convinced himself that he was meant to live like this, always moving, never staying, always alone. But tonight, as the wind grew colder and the shadows lengthened, he felt an unusual pull in his chest, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. The distant rumble of thunder made him glance up at the clouds. Storms came fast on these plains, and he knew he had little time. His horse, a strong bay named Dusty, snorted nervously and shifted his weight. Jake patted Dusty's neck, whispering, "It's all right, boy. We'll find shelter soon." His eyes scanned the horizon, searching for something that could offer safety. A tree, a rock overhang, anything. That's when he noticed it. A small, weathered cabin, standing alone amidst a sparse cluster of trees. Its roof sagged in places and the wood was darkened with age and weather, but it was a shelter, and for the first time that day, Jake felt hope. As he approached, the cabin seemed almost alive in its silence. The door hung slightly ajar, creaking gently in the wind. Dust motes danced in the last rays of sunlight filtering through the broken windows. Jake dismounted slowly, tying Dusty to a nearby post. He had learned long ago to be cautious. The world was not always kind, and people, or even animals, could be dangerous. His hand rested on the worn handle of his revolver, though he hoped he would not need it. He took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs, carrying with it the scent of rain and earth. He stepped closer, each footfall careful and measured. The porch was rickety, and the wood groaned under his weight. His eyes swept over the cabin's exterior. The walls were scarred by years of wind and sun, the windows dusty, and a small stone chimney leaned slightly to one side. There was a sense of abandonment here, yet something about it called to him, as if it held a story waiting to be discovered. He paused at the door, feeling a mix of curiosity and caution. The cabin could be empty, or it could be hiding something entirely unexpected. With a steadying breath, he pushed the door open, the hinges protesting with a long creak. The inside was dim, lit only by the fading light that filtered through the dirty windows. Dust hung in the air, disturbed by his entrance, and the smell of old wood and earth filled his nose. The cabin was small but functional. A simple wooden table stood near one corner, a few chairs scattered around, and a cot rested against the far wall. Small, handmade tools lay neatly on a shelf, evidence of someone who had lived here quietly and carefully. Jake's eyes swept the room, taking in every detail. That's when he saw her. A young girl, perhaps no older than 16, lay sleeping on the cot. Her dark hair fanned across the pillow, and her features were calm and peaceful, untouched by the worry that had settled over him in recent years. She wore a simple dress, patched in places but clean, and her hands rested lightly on her chest. Something about her presence made the cabin feel alive in a way that surprised him. He froze, unsure what to do, feeling both awe and a protective instinct he had not known he still possessed. For a moment he simply watched, careful not to disturb her. She seemed fragile, yet there was a quiet strength in her stillness. Jake could sense that this was no ordinary girl. She carried the weight of her own story, one that had brought her here, alone in this remote place. The wind outside rattled the windows and he felt the chill, but inside the room seemed almost warm, as if her presence created a small pocket of life and hope. He stepped closer, every movement deliberate. Dusty shifted outside, but the sound did not wake her. Jake's mind raced. Who was she? How had she ended up here? The questions were immediate and pressing, yet he knew that now was not the time for answers. She needed safety, and he was the only one who could offer it. He knelt beside the cot, careful not to touch her, and studied her face. Her skin was smooth, her eyes closed, and a faint smile curved her lips, as if she dreamed of something pleasant. Jake felt something stir deep within him, a sense of responsibility, of connection, of something he hadn't felt since he was a boy. His hand hovered over the back of the chair, gripping it for support, as if to anchor himself in this unexpected moment. He whispered softly to himself, though his voice was barely more than the rustle of the wind outside. "Who are you, little one? How did you come to be here all alone?" The cabin was quiet again, except for the distant roll of thunder and the soft creak of the floorboards under his weight. Jake took a seat on the edge of another chair, keeping his distance but remaining close enough to respond if she woke. His eyes never left her face. There was a story there, written in the lines of her hands, the tilt of her head, the quiet dignity of her posture. He wondered what hardships she had faced, what dangers she had survived, and what dreams she held in her heart. Time seemed to slow as he watched her sleep. The sky outside darkened further, and the first drops of rain began to tap against the roof. Jake felt a strange mix of anxiety and calm. He was a man used to danger, to isolation, yet he had never felt anything like this, a profound urge to protect someone so completely, to ensure that she was safe, warm, and cared for. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but inside the cabin there was a sense of fragile peace. He spoke again, barely above a whisper. "Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you." The words felt foreign to him, yet sincere. He had always believed that he was alone in the world, that attachment brought nothing but pain, but here, in this small cabin with the sleeping girl, he felt a spark of something he hadn't dared feel in years: hope. Hours passed, and the storm outside grew stronger. Rain pelted the roof, lightning illuminated the cabin in brief, harsh flashes, and thunder rolled across the plains. Jake remained seated, vigilant and watchful. He thought of the long road that had brought him here, of the losses he had endured, and of the life he had resigned himself to living. Yet now, with the rain falling and the girl sleeping peacefully, he felt a shift. The world, with all its harshness and unpredictability, had offered him a chance at something new, a chance to care, to protect, and perhaps to connect in a way he had thought impossible. As the night deepened, Jake finally allowed himself to rest, though never fully closing his eyes. He kept a quiet vigil, listening to the rhythm of the storm, feeling the presence of the girl in the room, and imagining a life where loneliness might finally be eased. For the first time in many years, he allowed himself to believe that the vast, empty plains could hold not just hardship and solitude, but also a fragile, beautiful possibility, a story waiting to be written, starting here, in a small, quiet cabin amidst the wild, untamed land. The storm outside raged through the night, hammering the cabin with sheets of rain and gusts of wind that shook the wooden walls. Lightning flashed through the windows, illuminating the room in sharp, bright bursts, and thunder rolled across the distant plains. Jake sat quietly in his chair, keeping watch over the girl. Sleep eluded him. His mind was alive with questions about her, and the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. As the hours passed, the first hint of dawn began to brighten the sky. The rain softened to a gentle drizzle, and the wind grew calm. Jake's eyes never left the girl as she stirred slightly in her sleep, her hand moving to adjust the blanket around her shoulders. Her dark hair fell across her face, and for a moment she looked even more fragile than before. Jake felt an almost overwhelming need to protect her, to make sure that she felt safe in this world, at least for a little while. They were a deep, rich brown, full of curiosity, alertness, and just a touch of wariness. She blinked, adjusting to the dim light, and her gaze met Jake's. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if they were both assessing one another, trying to understand the other without words. The girl, whose name Jake would soon learn, was Ayanna, sat up slowly, her small frame tense, yet graceful. "Good morning," Jake said softly, careful not to frighten her. His voice was calm, gentle, carrying no threat, only sincerity. Ayanna studied him, her eyes narrow at first. Then she whispered, Who are you?" Her voice was soft, melodic, but there was an edge of caution, born from experiences Jake could only imagine. "My name is Jake," he replied, keeping his tone steady. "I didn't mean to frighten you. I wanted to make sure you were safe from the storm." "Safe? From the storm?" she repeated, her voice uncertain. "You don't belong here." Jake shook his head. "No, I don't. I'm just passing through. I saw the cabin from the plains, and I thought it might be a place to wait out the rain. I didn't expect to find anyone inside." He paused, noticing her tense posture. "You live here?" Ayanna hesitated. She seemed unsure if she should answer, and Jake realized he needed to approach this carefully. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I just want to help if you need it." Slowly she relaxed, though only slightly. I live here," she admitted, It's been my home for a while. I keep to myself." He understood more than she could know. He, too, had kept to himself for years, moving from place to place, carrying memories that hurt too much to share. There was a connection in their silence, a shared understanding of loneliness and survival. "You're very brave," Jake said, his eyes meeting hers. "Living out here alone, it's not easy. The world can be harsh." Ayana's gaze softened slightly. "I have to be brave," she said quietly. "I have no one else. No family. No friends." Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the sorrow beneath her words. He swallowed hard, feeling a knot of empathy in his chest. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten how it felt to care for someone, to have someone depend on him. And yet, hearing her words stirred something deep within him, a desire to protect, to comfort, and perhaps to belong somewhere again. "Would you like some breakfast?" he asked. "I can make something." You cook?" she asked, a faint smile breaking through her cautious expression. "I can manage," he said with a small grin. "It's not fancy, but it will fill your stomach." They moved together in silence as Jake rummaged through his pack. He had some dried meat, bread, and a few eggs, enough to make a simple meal. Ayana watched carefully, helping where she could, and for the first time, a sense of companionship began to form between them. She was cautious, but she was also curious, and that curiosity opened a small window of trust. As they ate, Jake asked gently, "How did you come to live here alone?" "My family, they're gone," she said softly. "I had to survive. This cabin, it's the only place I could find. I know the land. I know the animals. I know how to stay safe." Jake nodded, understanding more than she knew. He too had learned to survive alone, relying on his wits, his skills, and his connection to the land. "You're very strong," he said sincerely. "It's not easy to be so self-reliant at your age." Ayana looked at him, and for the first time there was a flicker of warmth in her eyes. "And you?" she asked quietly. "You live alone too?" Jake hesitated, memories of his lost family surfacing. He shook his head slowly. "I did for a long time. I move from place to place. I don't stay anywhere too long. The world, it can be cruel if you let it get too close." Ayana studied him for a moment, sensing both the pain and the strength in his words. There was a quiet respect forming between them, built on shared experiences and unspoken understanding. She realized that despite his rugged exterior, Jake was someone who could be trusted, a rare thing in her life. After breakfast, they decided to tidy the cabin together. Jake swept the floor while Ayana dusted the shelves and organized her belongings. It was a simple, quiet activity, but it created a rhythm, a sense of normalcy. They exchanged small smiles, occasional glances, and soft words, each step building a fragile trust. Outside, the storm had passed. The rain left the plains sparkling, each blade of grass glistening with droplets. Birds began to return, their songs filling the air with life. Jake looked out the window, then back at Ayana. "It's a beautiful day," he said softly. "The storm is over. Maybe it's a sign of a new beginning." Ayana smiled faintly, though she did not speak. She was cautious, aware that new beginnings could be fragile and fleeting. Yet, deep down, she felt a sense of relief. Someone had come, someone who cared, someone who might make her long days of solitude a little lighter. Jake stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said gently. "I can stay for a while, help you, if you want." Ayana's eyes widened slightly. No one had ever offered her that before. "Stay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Jake said simply. "I can stay. I'll make sure you're safe. You don't have to face everything on your own." For a long moment they stood there, the cabin silent except for the faint creak of the wooden floor. Ayana felt something stir in her heart, an emotion she had not known in a long time. Trust, safety, perhaps even hope. I think I'd like that," she said finally, her voice soft but certain. Jake nodded, a sense of calm settling over him. He had no illusions about what this meant. He had spent years alone, believing he could never truly belong. But in that small cabin, with this young girl who had survived so much, he felt something new. A connection, a purpose, a chance to protect, to care, and perhaps to be part of a life that mattered beyond himself. They spent the rest of the day together. Jake repaired a loose board on the porch, while Ayana gathered firewood. They laughed quietly at small mishaps, exchanged stories of their past, and began to build a bond. It was tentative, fragile, but it was real. The cabin, once a place of solitude, became a shared space, a beginning of trust and companionship. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the plains, Jake and Ayana sat on the porch together. The wind was gentle, the air warm, and for the first time in a long while, neither of them felt entirely alone. Jake looked at her, his voice soft. "You've been through a lot," he said, "but you're strong, and I want to help, if you'll let me." Ayana looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both caution and hope. "I think I'd like that," she said again, her voice firmer this time. Jake nodded, feeling a quiet sense of purpose. The plains were wide, the world was harsh, but here, in this small cabin, they had found a beginning. And as the first stars began to appear in the sky, both of them felt a fragile, comforting certainty. They were no longer entirely alone. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of the cabin, spilling warm light across the wooden floor. The storm from the previous night had passed completely, leaving the plains washed clean, sparkling with dew, and filled with the soft sound of birdsong. Jake had risen early, as was his habit, but this time he wasn't alone. Ayana stirred from her sleep, blinking slowly as she adjusted to the morning light. She had spent a restless night, thinking about Jake. His presence was strange, yet comforting, like a light cutting through the long shadows of her solitude. She could feel something different in the air, the sense that this encounter, this unexpected connection, was more than mere coincidence. She quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake him, and padded to the small window, watching the plains shimmer in the early sun. Jake, meanwhile, was outside tending to Dusty. The horse had a soft, patient demeanor, nuzzling Jake's shoulder as he brushed away the dirt and tangles from his mane. When he saw Ayana at the window, he gave her a small, gentle nod, a silent acknowledgement of shared space and morning peace. She returned the nod, feeling a flicker of warmth in her chest, a small but welcome reminder that human connection could exist even in the wild, remote places of the world. After breakfast, they worked together again, a quiet rhythm forming between them. Jake chopped wood for the fireplace, each swing of the axe steady and deliberate, while Ayana gathered herbs and small vegetables she had planted near the cabin. The work was simple, practical, and grounding, yet it allowed them to communicate in small ways, through shared smiles, gestures, and occasional words. Finally, when the tasks of the morning were complete, Jake settled onto a worn wooden chair with a quiet sigh. Ayana approached slowly, carrying a small basket of wild berries. "Here," she said softly, offering it to him. "For breakfast? Or a snack?" Jake accepted it, his fingers brushing hers briefly. That small touch sent a surprising warmth through him, a sensation he had not felt in years. "Thank you, Ayana," he said. "These look perfect." They ate together in silence for a while, the simplicity of the moment holding a quiet power. Jake looked at her thoughtfully, noticing the careful way she moved, the grace in her small gestures, and the quiet intelligence that shone in her eyes. "You know," he said after a moment, "you're stronger than you realize. You've survived out here on your own, and that takes more courage than most people ever see." Ayana's gaze dropped to her hands. I had to," she said softly. "There was no one else. I didn't have a choice. If I didn't learn, I wouldn't have survived." Her voice carried both strength and a quiet sadness, a reminder of the hardships she had endured. Jake leaned back slightly, letting the words sink in. He could understand. He too had been forced to survive alone, learning lessons he would have rather never faced. Yet in her honesty, in her resilience, he saw something remarkable, a spirit unbroken by the world, a light that refused to dim even in the darkest circumstances. For the next few hours, they walked along the edge of the plains, exploring the land together. Jake showed her where the best water flowed after the storm and how to read the signs of animals in the grass. She listened carefully, absorbing every detail, asking questions, and occasionally offering her own insights. The interaction was natural, almost effortless, as if they had always known each other in some unspoken way. As the sun climbed higher, a gentle breeze carried the scent of the plains into the cabin. Jake paused, looking at Ayana with a quiet seriousness he rarely allowed himself to show. "Ayana," he began, his voice low, "I want to be honest with you. I didn't come here expecting this. Finding you, it feels like something I wasn't ready for, but I can't ignore it. There's something about you. I feel like I need to protect you, to make sure you're safe." Ayana stopped walking, turning to face him. Her eyes were wide, uncertain, and a little nervous. "Jake, I don't understand. Protect me? I can survive on my own. I've done it for years. I know you can. I can see that. But there's a difference between surviving and living. You've been surviving alone for so long. I don't want you to be alone anymore. I want to be there for you, not as someone who controls your life, but as someone who chooses to be by your side. Always. Her heart quickened at his words. There was an intensity, a sincerity in his voice that was impossible to ignore. For years she had guarded her heart, keeping people at a distance to protect herself. But Jake, he was different. He wasn't asking her to surrender her independence. He was offering companionship, safety, and trust. Jake stepped closer, lowering his voice even more, as if the wind itself might carry his words away. Ayana, I know this may sound sudden. I know we've only just met, but I feel it in my heart. You and I, we belong together. I want to marry you. Ayana froze, her breath catching in her throat. The words were so unexpected, so bold, yet they carried a weight of truth that she could not dismiss. She wanted to respond, to speak, but no words came. Her mind raced. Marriage? A promise? She had never imagined such a thing, especially in her life of solitude and survival. Jake saw the hesitation in her eyes and softened his tone. I don't mean to scare you, he said gently. It's not just a word I'm saying lightly. I've never felt this before, never wanted this before. But with you, I do. I can't explain it fully, but I know it's real. I want to spend my life with you, to face the world together, no matter what comes. Ayana looked down at her hands, struggling with the mix of fear, surprise, and something else she couldn't quite name. Hope. She had spent her life learning to depend on no one, yet here was someone offering not just protection, but a partnership, a shared life. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to believe that happiness might exist for her after all these lonely years? She met his gaze again, and in that moment she saw the truth in his eyes, the honesty, the determination, and the respect he had for her. Slowly, almost tentatively, she nodded. I need time, she whispered. I can't just decide now. But I want to trust you. I want to try. That's all I ask, he said. We'll take it one day at a time. I'm not going anywhere. The rest of the day passed in a quiet, shared rhythm. They worked around the cabin, preparing for the coming days, and shared stories of their pasts. Ayana told Jake about her life before the cabin, her family, and the challenges she had faced. Jake shared memories of his own, of loss, of wandering the plains, and the long years of solitude. Each story brought them closer, building a bridge of understanding and empathy between two people who had once believed they were destined to be alone. As evening approached, they sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the distant hills. The sky was painted with shades of pink, orange, and purple, a breathtaking reminder of the beauty in the world. Jake turned to Ayana, his voice quiet but full of meaning. I know the world can be harsh, he said, but out here, together, I think we can face anything. You don't have to be alone anymore. Ayana nodded, feeling the truth of his words. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't constantly watching over her shoulder, where she could trust someone fully, where love and safety were possible. It was frightening, but also exhilarating. As the stars began to appear in the sky, they remained on the porch, side by side, comfortable in each other's presence. The wind carried the scent of the plains, the quiet sounds of the night, and a sense of new beginnings. Jake knew the road ahead would have challenges, but he also knew that for the first time in many years, he had found someone worth facing them with. And Ayana, despite her cautious heart, felt the stirrings of a connection she had never thought possible. The promise of companionship, of trust, of love, lingered in the air between them, a whispered truth neither of them could ignore. The days that followed were filled with quiet routines, small discoveries, and the slow unfolding of trust between Jake and Ayana. The cabin, once a place of solitude, had begun to feel like a shared home, and both of them felt the subtle shift of their lives intertwining. Yet the world outside the small wooden walls of the cabin was unpredictable, and challenges always lay in wait on the open plains. Jake spent the mornings tending to the animals in the small garden Ayana had nurtured over the years. The girl had taught him which herbs were safe to eat, which plants could heal minor injuries, and how to find water even when the streams ran low. He watched her carefully as she moved through the land with quiet confidence. Her knowledge of the plains, the animals, and the changing weather amazed him. She was strong, independent, and capable, and he felt his admiration for her growing each day. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Jake noticed something unusual near the edge of the trees. A set of tracks led toward the cabin, too large to be a small animal but not entirely clear what they belonged to. His instincts sharpened immediately. He had learned over the years that the plains were full of dangers, and strangers, or even wild animals, could appear without warning. "Ayana," he called softly, motioning for her to come closer. "Look at these." She approached quietly, her eyes narrowing as she examined the marks in the soil. "They're fresh," she said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "Someone, or something, was here recently. We should be careful. We'll stay alert. Don't worry, I'll protect you." The hours that followed were spent preparing the cabin for any possible threat. Jake reinforced the door with a sturdy wooden beam, checked the windows, and made sure Dusty was safely tethered where he could be quickly mounted if needed. Ayana helped, gathering supplies and keeping watch. The shared work brought them closer, and though there was an undercurrent of anxiety, there was also a growing sense of unity between them. As evening approached, the sky darkened with clouds, not from a storm this time, but from the long shadows of late afternoon. The plains seemed quiet, almost too quiet, and both Jake and Ayana felt the weight of anticipation. They shared a meal in silence, each lost in thought, aware that the safety they had built could be fragile. Suddenly, a sharp sound broke the stillness, the snap of a branch, followed by a low murmur in the distance. Jake's hand went instinctively to his side, and he stood, scanning the horizon. Ayana followed his gaze, her own heart quickening. The sound came again, closer this time, and Jake could make out the shapes of figures moving cautiously through the trees. "Stay inside," Jake whispered to Ayana. "Don't make a sound." She nodded, gripping the edge of the table, her body tense but calm. She trusted him, and that trust gave her courage. Jake stepped outside, his movements deliberate and silent, his eyes never leaving the approaching figures. As they drew closer, he could see that they were not animals but men, settlers or travelers, their intentions unclear. He met them with a firm but controlled voice. "Who's there?" he called. The men froze, startled by the sudden presence of someone outside the cabin. One stepped forward cautiously. "We mean no harm," he said, his tone careful. "We're just passing through. Didn't expect anyone to be here." He had learned to read the honesty, or dishonesty, in a person's eyes. "Passing through," he repeated slowly. "Are you armed? Are you planning to take anything?" The men hesitated, then shook their heads. "No, sir," the one in front replied. "We're just travelers looking for shelter from the storm." "All right," he said cautiously. "You can rest outside. The cabin is small, and it's not safe to bring strangers inside. Keep your distance." The men nodded and settled a few yards from the cabin, keeping their fire low and their movements minimal. Jake returned to the cabin, closing the door carefully behind him. Ayana exhaled slowly, relief flooding her face. "You handled that well," she said quietly. Jake smiled faintly. "We'll have to be careful," he said. "The plains are full of people who aren't as honest as they seem, but for now, we're safe." The days that followed were tense but uneventful. The presence of the travelers served as a reminder that danger was always near, but it also gave Jake and Ayana an opportunity to rely on each other more deeply. They shared tasks, conversations, and quiet moments of laughter, each discovering new ways to support and trust one another. One afternoon, as they walked along the edge of the trees to check on the garden, Ayana spoke quietly. "Jake, why do you stay here with me? You don't have to. You could leave and keep wandering the plains like before." Jake looked at her, a small, thoughtful smile on his face. "I could," he said, "but I don't want to. I've spent years alone thinking that was all life had to offer me, but now I see something different. I see someone worth caring for, worth staying for, and I see a future I want to be part of, with you." Ayana felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. His sincerity was impossible to ignore, and for the first time in her life she allowed herself to believe that she didn't have to face the world alone. The bond between them deepened further when they were forced to face another challenge. One evening, a wild animal, likely a coyote or wolf, approached the cabin, drawn by the scent of food. Its low growl echoed through the night, sending a shiver through both of them. Jake reacted immediately, moving to stand between Ayana and the creature. He picked up a sturdy branch and waved it, shouting to scare it away. The animal paused, then, realizing it was not alone, slunk back into the shadows of the trees. Ayana's hands trembled slightly, but she steadied herself, looking at Jake with admiration. "You were amazing," she said softly. "I don't think I could have handled that alone." Jake smiled, brushing off the tension. You don't have to be alone anymore, and you won't have to face things like that by yourself." That night, as they sat by the fire, they shared stories of their past struggles, their fears, and their hopes for the future. The conversation flowed easily, the warmth of the fire reflecting the warmth growing between them. Each story, each shared memory, built a deeper understanding, and with it, a growing affection neither could deny. Days turned into weeks, and the cabin became a place of safety and belonging. Jake and Ayanna learned to rely on each other in small ways, sharing tasks, teaching skills, and offering support. The trust between them grew steadily, a quiet foundation for something stronger. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples, Jake looked at Ayanna, his voice gentle. "I know I said it before, but I want you to know again. I want to spend my life with you. Not just in this cabin, not just here and now, but always." Ayanna looked at him, her eyes reflecting both the fading sunlight and the deep trust she had come to feel. "I want that too," she said softly. I've never trusted anyone like this before, but I trust you." The touch was gentle, yet it carried a promise of protection, care, and shared life. They sat together hand in hand, watching the stars appear one by one, feeling a quiet certainty that they were no longer alone. Even in the wild, unpredictable plains, they had found something rare, a connection that went beyond survival, beyond solitude, beyond the hardships they had faced. Together they discovered hope, trust, and the quiet, powerful beginnings of love. The world outside remained vast and unpredictable, but inside the small cabin they found safety, comfort, and each other. And as they sat by the fire, listening to the night, both Jake and Ayanna felt a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible, a belief that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead, side by side. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between Jake and Ayanna grew stronger with each passing moment. The cabin, once a place of solitude and survival, had become a home filled with laughter, small routines, and the quiet comfort of companionship. Each morning brought a shared rhythm, feeding Dusty, tending the garden, collecting firewood, and walking the plains together. Life was simple, yet full of meaning. One morning, Jake woke before Ayanna. The sun had just begun to peek over the horizon, casting long golden rays across the plains. He stepped outside, letting the cool morning air wash over him, and looked out across the land he had wandered for so many years. For the first time, he felt that this place, this life, and this girl might be where he truly belonged. Ayanna emerged from the cabin, rubbing her eyes and yawning softly. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying the quiet warmth that had become familiar to Jake. "Good morning," Jake replied, smiling. "Ready for today?" She nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, it's a beautiful morning." They worked together, as usual, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Both of them felt it, an unspoken understanding that their lives were about to take a step forward. They finished their chores and sat on the porch, watching Dusty graze on the fresh morning grass. Jake turned to Ayanna, his eyes meeting hers. "Ayanna," he began softly, "I want to talk to you about something important. Something I've felt for a long time now." Ayanna's heart quickened. She had felt the depth of his feelings, had seen the care and protection he offered, but hearing him speak with such intention made her nervous and excited all at once. "What is it?" she asked gently. Jake took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "When I first found you here, sleeping in this cabin, I never imagined I would feel what I feel now. But I did. I feel a connection to you, a trust, and a care I haven't felt in years. You've become more than a companion. You've become someone I can't imagine my life without." Ayanna's eyes softened, her hand resting on her lap. She could feel the sincerity in his words, the weight of the promise he was about to make. "I know it might seem sudden," Jake continued, his voice quiet but firm, "but I want to spend my life with you, Ayanna. Not just to protect you, not just to be here in the cabin, but always. I want us to face the world together, to share the joys, the hardships, and everything in between. I want to marry you." Ayanna's breath caught. The words, once whispered in a moment of hope, now carried the full weight of intention, sincerity, and promise. She felt a swirl of emotions, fear, hope, excitement, and love, all at once. She looked into his eyes, seeing the truth there, a man who had wandered for years, who had lost so much, and who now offered her not just protection, but partnership. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I never imagined this could happen. I've been alone for so long, and now You're offering me a life I never thought possible. Jake reached out, gently taking her hands in his. Say what you feel, Ayanna. You don't have to rush. I'm not asking for an answer today. Not if you're not ready. I just want you to know how I feel, and that my promise is real. She looked down at their joined hands, then back into his eyes. In that moment, she felt the years of loneliness, fear, and uncertainty fall away, replaced by a quiet certainty she hadn't thought possible. Jake, she said softly, I trust you. And I want this too. I want to share my life with you. A gentle smile spread across Jake's face. Relief, joy, and love mixed together in his expression. Then it's settled, he said softly. We'll face the world together, Ayanna. No matter what comes, we'll face it as one. The day passed in a gentle rhythm, filled with preparation and planning. They repaired parts of the cabin, organized supplies, and even decorated the small living space with touches of warmth. Simple flowers in a jar, a neatly folded blanket, and small arrangements of stones and herbs that Ayanna had collected. Each act of care strengthened the sense that this place and their life together was truly theirs. As evening approached, Jake suggested a walk to the nearby stream. The path was familiar, yet every step felt new because they were walking together, side by side, their hands brushing occasionally, their glances brushing occasionally, their glances meeting with quiet smiles. The plains stretched endlessly around them, golden in the light of the setting sun. Birds chirped softly in the trees, and the gentle sound of running water guided them toward the stream. At the edge of the water, Jake stopped and turned to Ayanna. Do you remember when I first found you here? He asked softly, sleeping in the cabin, all alone. I do. I was so frightened. And you came and offered safety. Jake took a deep breath. I never expected to find someone like you. Someone strong, brave, and incredible. I didn't know how much I needed you until I met you. Ayanna reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. And I didn't know how much I needed someone like you. Someone who sees me, respects me. Someone I can trust. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, reflecting in the calm waters of the stream. Jake knelt slowly on one knee, taking Ayanna's other hand in his. Ayanna, he said, his voice steady and full of emotion, I promise to care for you, to protect you, and to share every moment of life with you. Will you marry me? Tears welled in Ayanna's eyes, but her smile was radiant, full of hope and love. Yes, Jake, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Jake stood, lifting her hands to his lips in a gentle, tender kiss, sealing the promise that had begun months ago in that small cabin. Around them the plains stretched wide and endless, but at that moment all that mattered was the bond they had formed, the life they were choosing to build together. The weeks that followed were filled with preparation for their future, small celebrations of their commitment, and the continued strengthening of their relationship. They worked together on the cabin, hunted and gathered food, and planned the life they would share. Each day was simple, yet meaningful, as they built a partnership based on trust, respect, and love. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Ayanna rested her head on Jake's shoulder. Do you ever think about the past? She asked softly. Jake nodded, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. Sometimes. But the past doesn't hold me anymore. I've learned from it, yes, but now I have a reason to look forward. I have you and the life we're building together. Ayanna smiled, feeling the truth of his words. I feel the same. I've been alone for so long, but now I feel like I belong. With you, you do belong, and you always will. As night fell, the cabin was filled with warmth, the warmth of a fire, the warmth of a companionship, and the warmth of a love that had grown from unexpected beginnings. Outside, the plains were quiet, vast, and endless, but inside the small cabin, two hearts had found a home. They knew the world would continue to challenge them. Storms would come, and the plains could be unforgiving. But together, they had found strength, hope, and the courage to face anything. Their love was not a fleeting moment, but a promise built on trust, shared experiences, and a deep understanding of each other's hearts. And as they drifted to sleep that night, side by side, hands entwined, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, always.